So good evening, everyone, and welcome to Facebook and YouTube. And we're very excited to show you the products of our fantastic community music project this year, Our Living Rivers and Glens, presented by the Dee and Don Cayley Collective. I'm a guitarist living in a boy. My name's Steve Garrett. My co-host tonight is Shona Donaldson, who's a singer who lives in Thailand. She's going to tell you more about our evening.
Yeah, so as Steve said, we are incredibly excited to showcase our 9 new compositions tonight. It's going to be quite an informal evening of interviews and new music and our very, very lovely book launch. We have, as part of the project, come up with a legacy book, and a bit more about that later.
So the Dee and Don Cayley Collective was started in 2016, and for most of the time since then was focused on having 4 or 5 live face-to-face events at weekends with workshops, Cayleys and sessions. Obviously, COVID has put a stop to that, and so we came up with a new project, Our Living Rivers and Glens, which has included 80 participants. Coming up with new tunes, and you'll be hearing for them tonight. And our composers are Fraser Fifield and Charlie McKerron, with guitar accompanying MacCallum, and Hamish Napier, and Arthur Coates, and Adam Sutherland, Jenny Sturgeon, and Iona Fyfe, and Shona's participating as a composer, as well as our project manager.
Yeah, so as part of the project, we had 3 workshop phases, I suppose you would call them. And the initial workshop was called the Inspiration Workshop. And that saw the composers meeting online with the participants to delve into a media map. More on that just in a moment. But they discussed what inspired them from the map, and they shared ideas of what they might come up with for their new tunes and songs. And then the next workshops were the composition workshops, and the composers came along with partially formed or very nearly fully formed pieces of music. And they explained the background to them, to the participants, and asked for feedback and got ideas of where to go with it as well. And then the last phase of the workshops, we've just newly completed them actually, they were the tuition workshops. And we welcomed lots of participants along to that to learn the new tunes and the new songs which were inspired by the media map. And they were not only taught by our composers, but by our 4 fantastic local tutors. We had Pete MacCallum and Carola MacCallum. We had Avril Blackhall and Grace Banks joining us for the tuition phase. And personally, from a composer's point of view, it's been different to any project that I've been involved in. Spark that the composers saw right through to being taught the tune at the very end. And hopefully the participants have picked up hints and tips from the composers along the way, and have also hopefully been encouraged to write their own tunes and songs inspired by the media map. So I'll hand over to Steve now to introduce our first 2 guests.
So our first 2 guests have been very involved in the 2 of the key products at the very beginning and at the very end of the project. At the very beginning, really the first central part of the project was our media map, where we captured the wanderings of our participants in sights and sounds and words, and they're put together on a Google Earth map. And then the product at the end is this beautiful book that will be introduced. So it's my great pleasure to introduce you to Pete Stollery, who's a composer based in Aberdeen. And Pete is the director of the Sound Festival, as well as having worked with us this year. And Pete's really the brains behind the media map, so he'll be showing us through that. And then Gill Russell is an artist based in Glenkindie. Gill's practice is about interaction with the natural environment and wandering. I'm grateful to Gill for introducing me to the concept of extreme sauntering, where you have to walk very slowly so you can take in the natural environment around you. Gill's been very involved in the media map, but particularly in the beautiful book which she'll introduce. So over to you, Pete and Gill.
Thank you, Steve. It's great to have been part of this project. With Gill, I put together the media map, which provided the inspiration for the composers to create their compositions. As it's been said, we've had 80 participants provide images, sounds, texts, even poems and music, which are captured on mobile phones and then sent up via Dropbox links and all kinds of things to be able to be put on the media map, which became the source of inspiration for all the composers to create their work. So let's have a walkthrough of the media map. So here you can see all the map icons of the locations that our participants wanted to give us inspiration. Down here on the left-hand side, you've got a list of these, all in alphabetical order, so you can double-click on these to go straight to that particular location. So let's just have a quick look at some examples, just to give you an idea of how this works. So if we double-click on Harmony there, you'll see that the map zooms in to that particular location. And on the right-hand side here, we've got this container box where all the media is put. So this is a simple one where someone who's just taken this picture of these trees, tall pines like bass strings, young silver birch leaves simmering like a string quartet. We wanted people to write about their stimuli as well, to be able to give a little bit of information about it to help the composers along the way, as they were, if they were going to be choosing this this inspiration. Another example here is Mill Pond. So if we double click on that entry, we zoom into that. Here on the right, you will see that we've got some audio for this one as well. We've also got a poem that the person who put this up, which is their own reflection on that particular place. This is actually a tune that someone made at that particular place, at the Mill Pond, to help again with the stimulus for the composer. So the stimulus came in all kinds of different guises. So we've had poem, we've had audio, we've had videos, we've had images, and so on. So I'll take you to this one, the Meeting of the Waters. Again, so this is in Huntly. We've got the Meeting of the Waters down at the Invers where the bogey feeds the Deveron. So lots of inspiration there. In the form of words and images that you can just scroll down and have a look at. And in fact, right at the top, you see that Iona Fyfe, one of our composers, was inspired by this particular entry. And so we put at the top here the song that she wrote. So you can click on that here to listen to it, go to more information there about it. Let's just have a quick listen here. I hate to do that. Sorry, Iona. We are going to be listening to that later on anyway. But you can listen and you can look through at the inspiration as well. Just one last one, Seven Red Giants, which is these 7 trees here. So you can actually open those up in another tab up here, and then you can see them in all their glory. These are these 7 massive trees near the Towel and Burn in Aboyne. And Shona Donaldson wrote this beautiful song in as a response to that inspiration.
Dear mother, I hope this letter finds you well.
Again, apologies, Shona. and everyone to cut that off there. But that gives you an idea of the way that the map works. We've got over 80 entries here for people to have a look at. So hope you enjoy that little tour of the media map.
Okay, well, I'd like to talk about the book. This is our Living Rivers and Glens, a legacy book, and it evolved from the Dee Don Ceilidh Collective Tune Book, which Steve Garrett had been compiling for a number of years, where we collected tunes for people to play in sessions and so on. But given the collaborative nature of this project and the importance of participants in place, I suggested we take it further and make a legacy book which sort of focuses not just on the music written, but on the resonance between participants, composers, and place, using visual communication, context, and reflections. And on the cover of the book is the two rivers, which are the Don, which is north, and the Dee south, with the bogey coming in. So we've got the glens and the rivers, and then this is mirrored on the next page in the places that Pete's just shown you on the map, with the rivers superimposed underneath. And I was very privileged to be able to work with a designer, Richie Lamb, who, which was, this was a really nice thing, because he took my kind of imagery and texts and context and made it all beautiful with the font and form that was just perfect, and I couldn't have done it without him. So for each composer, there is a page of music. I don't know if you can see a page of music followed by program notes. So we have a page of music sheets. So they have a page of music, program notes, which give the composer's connection with the place and the insights that they use to make their compositions. And then after that, there's a double page of imagery where I try to focus on the context of the place and the participants' connections to that. So it's a sort of rhythm to the book. You get the music, then you get the imagery with the context, with the participants' connections. So the idea was to bring out a resonance between participants, place, and composers. I also have to mention that the reason you're seeing this particular book in the physical form is because we worked very hard in the middle of our power cut to bring it to fruition. And we all had a 6-day power cut with hardly any mobile signal, most of us, and it affected the whole of the final proofing team. And Pete Stollery had to drive all the way to Star in Aberdeen to phone me with corrections, and I wrote them down on a piece of paper in candlelight and then emailed Richie, the designer. So that kind of thing went on. Oh yeah, meanwhile, Janet was in Communicado in Outer Glenbucket, and Steve Garrett, he was, I think, mainly cooking porridge over a wood-burning stove. So anyway, we managed to do it somehow. So here you are, this is our book in its physical form. And so I'm not going to go through all the pages in the book because you're going to have to buy it for that. But like this page, some pages focus on specific detail. Like this is Fraser Fyfield's page, his imagery page, where he used the sounds of the ringing stone for his composition. And ringing stone was put up by one of our star participants, Alan Carr, who I hope is listening tonight. And he had made many trips to the ringing stone and made a video of his own about it. So Fraser connected with that, and a lot of composers connected with the ringing stone. But some of the other pages are more straightforward in terms of what they are. For instance, this is Charlie McKerron's page, and it was simple reflections on how the composers used the map to inspire their compositions. And Charlie wrote very directly about his inspiration from multiple sites and how they informed his composition. And he wrote in a way that I thought brought out this sort of sheer joy and immersion of the process. So I wanted to sort of plug into that and just keep it simple with a simple image and quotes from Charlie. And so he gets very excited about fiddling about with bird sound and creating all these different things from multiple sites on the map. And at the end, he writes here, he says, so when I came to doing the final recording, I had a rough plan, but I went with the flow and I loved the combination of the sounds of the rigging stone and the glacier and found the rhythm soothing, and it reminded me of a creaking deck on a wooden ship and became quite trance-like for me. So I thought it was kind of nice. Other composers made trips to see the sites themselves. And Paul Anderson, he was one of them. And Paul actually wrote 3 tunes for this book, for the project. And he said he found there were too many sites that he was inspired by. And he went to visit some of them, including the one, Hosie's Well, which Pete Stollery put up, and that's on Benahee. And he went to visit the Millert North, which Alan McIntosh put up. And he made this wonderful video of his trip, and he played the tunes at the sites. So that's a really nice thing to watch. So that was one way of, all the composers interacted quite differently with the map. And another person that came to visit was Adam, because Adam was also inspired by several sites on the map. And he made the trip all the way from Glasgow to come up and see us. And I don't know if you can see him there. Oh, there he is at the Cabrach. So Ron Brander, who's another of our star participants, gave Adam a tour of the Cabrach. And Ron had put up the last tree in the Cabrach. And this was a strange thing. This last tree in the Cabrach is something that Ron and I came across in 2014 on our trip to the Cabrach. It was actually on referendum day. And we found this kind of old stalk of a rowan tree and we tied a wish to it. And several years later, Ron went back and he discovered that this tree was gone. So this became the last tree in the Cabrach. So Adam used this as his inspiration. And then sometimes I found it necessary to go a wee bit beyond the sort of direct connections of the map and bring in a kind of wider context. For instance, with Jenny's page here. Jenny used sites from the map, and she was inspired by themes such as heritage, the movement of people along the Dee and the Don, the passages of time, and people at rest in old kirkyards. And Sheena Blackhall had written this poem about sleepers in the kirkyard, about Birthkirk. And then other people, I took other people like Chris Bell here, he put up a flint, a Mesolithic flint. And he was reflecting on, he held this in his hand, but who was the last person to hold this in their hand 10,000 years ago? Steve Garrett put up reflections about the cycles of time, about rain falling on Bursmore Loch. And I made this walk into the hills along the Geldie and camped where the Mesolithics camped. So they went over watersheds and came into the icy hills following the rivers as they did. But however, one of the really nice things about this book is you guys. This is our sea of names, and it's everybody that had anything to do with the project is on this double page at the back, in whatever way. So if you want to check, you guys out there who contributed, that your name's on there, you might have to buy a copy of the book. And at the back of the book, we have all the credits And we have 3 QR codes which lead you to download the new music, the sheet music, and the map. So it's been quite a thing for me to be involved in bringing this book to fruition, and it's been a real collaborative project. And I'd like to thank the book team, Steve, Garrett, Pete Stollery and Janet Fitton, for their support and trusting me to make it happen. So over to you, Shona.
Thank you so much to Gill and Pete for that. I hope you enjoyed that wee explanation about the map and a sneak preview of the book as well. We are incredibly proud of the book and the project. Not only were we congratulated in the Scottish Parliament for the project, we were also nominated as Community Project of the Year at the MG Alba Trad Music Awards earlier this month. So we've had a whale of a time over the past year. We really have enjoyed it so much. If you would like to buy the book, head over to our website. It's www.ddoncayleycollective.com, and you'll see a link there for our Living Rivers and Glens book. So I am going to pass back to Gill, who is going to explain what she has in her glass, and we are going to officially launch the book with a wee toast.
Okay, folks, I have something in my glass. Ishkave, the water of life, which is whiskey. But I've also got some very special water, because I made a trip to the Well of Dee, which is the source of the River Don. And I got some water and I bottled it and I kept it in the fridge for this very moment. So I hope you're going to join me in a toast to the book and the project as a whole. And here we go. Slàinte.
Cheers.
Here's to the book, the project, everybody here, everybody we've worked with, all the participants, the composers. Thank you so much.
Brilliant. So I'm going to hand over to Steve, who is going to introduce our very first person for the musical section of this evening.
So yeah, our first piece of music is from Hamish Napier. Hamish is a multi-instrumentalist and composer who lives in Granton-on-Spey. His practice is very much connected with the natural environment as well. He's written a lot about Speyside, a lot of tunes about Speyside, and also the woods is one of his albums. So this project really fitted into Hamish's approach to being inspired by natural environment. So we've just had a toast from the Wells of Dee from Gill, and Hamish's piece is from the Wells of Dee, and he's prepared a video for us which shows the music, but it also introduces us to the place that inspired it, the Wells of Dee. So. Wasn't that beautiful? So just hold that last phrase of 3 notes in your mind, because Hamish and I are going to talk about it. He couldn't be with us tonight, but we did a pre-recorded interview during the week, and so we're able to share that with you now. So hi Hamish, thanks very much for joining us, and it's lovely to listen to the music and see your amazing video of the Wells of Dee. So let's talk a little bit about the piece itself. I mean, what inspiration did you get from the map? And also the video itself looks a bit personal. I wonder if that's your dad in there. So clearly there's some deeper meanings in there as well. So talk a little bit about the inspiration for the piece and what it means to you.
There's loads of really interesting things on the musical map, and I think one of the first places I looked were the bits that were closest to where I live over here in Grattan and Spey on this side of the national park. And there were a few stories that cropped up. There was an interesting ghost story about Carúr Bothy, and I had a little bit of local folklore that I'd kind of linked that up to in my head as well. And I was thinking, gosh, you know, you hear about these little stories and there's other ones that connect up with them. So that was one thing I'd thought about exploring, but also there was a great sound recording made by Helen Needham of the Wells of Dee, which start up there on the plateau just near Brereach, and I thought that looks great. I think that's what I've decided I was going to do, and I think it was during lockdown, and actually it was while I was unwell with COVID actually that I wrote the tune, and I was obviously confined to the wee cottage out the back of the house for like 12 days or something, and I just spent the time browsing the National Library of Scotland maps, you know, these old maps, and you have like a kind of a Google Earth map, and then you can overlay it with maps from like 1880 or 1911 or whatever, and you can see. And you can kind of fade them in and out over the top of each other, and then you just roam around the landscape on these maps. And when you walk up in the Cairngorms there, it's not just a simple case of north, south, east, west. You know, it's like everything is always turning and rotating and at a funny angle. And then, you know, I'll be walking with my father and he says, no, that's north. And you're like, oh my goodness, 180 degrees out. You know, you get so disorientated so when you go for a walk up there and then you sort of start to figure out how it's all put together, it's just kind of like learning the landscape, or trying to anyway. It's got so many nooks and crannies to it and little hidden corries and lochans and things like that up there. It's absolutely beautiful. There's a bit of the Garv Corrie there that you think is the Larry Grew, and then you find out, no, this is just a spin-off from the Larry Grew. It's like an offshoot. So it was great to go on the map and actually sort of get, you know, be able to figure out that landscape and get it in solid in my head. So yeah, that was why I chose that tune. And I think that just, you know, perhaps it's a bit of a clunky method, but I just think, well, that's water coming up through the cracks in the earth, then the music needs to sound like it's going up and then coming back down, tumbling back down again. So a big arc of a phrase was what I came up with for that on the piano, and then adding flutes later. So it kind of, hopefully if the idea comes from that origin of, you know, looking at the thing itself, the Well of Dee, the origins of the River Dee coming out of the earth, and you kind of go, how could I represent that melodically if it was a wee soundtrack, you know? At the risk of being a bit cheesy, you know, it's like, but you know, you try to make it work so that it's convincing at least. But that was a really great thing to take me away from the fact that I was confined in this small space, was that thank goodness for the internet and these maps and being able to go on a virtual hill walk.
Yes, one thing I particularly enjoyed in the project was you asked the Twitter sphere, what's going on with the Wells of Dee? Where does the water come from? And we had like Robert McFarlane chipping in and all sorts of people flying from all over the world. So, and it's really nice. It comes out in your video nicely as well, the way, yeah, you've got the Wells of Dee, the pools of Dee, and then it goes over this cliff and you've got this incredible waterfall down the Larry Grew. It's just amazing. And so...
Yeah, there's all sorts of random things around there. There's a loch there called Loch Anunia that's like I've been up there on a summer's day and it reflects the sky, like even though it's a bright blue sky, it's like this deep navy blue. And then it's green another time, and it just looks like a hole in the earth. It doesn't look like a loch. It's like an optical illusion the way it looks. It looks like a black hole or something like that. And where it sits up on this little table in the middle of a corrie, it's just an amazing landscape. And that's only one bit of one part of the plateau.
So let's talk a bit about the music itself. And like you say, there's this sort of arc in this phrase with an arc that goes up and down, and that's repeated really nicely in sort of nice variations as well as you go through. So that's it's very atmospheric, and it's nice the way you build up the arrangement as well. It's really quiet with just a piano, and then gradually bringing these different layers. So it's almost like the river maturing and getting bigger as it goes downstream. Was that kind of the way you were thinking?
And I think when it comes to composition, you've got all these different elements, and the first element is like the note, a single note against a chord or a drone, and what that is. And then your next thing I sometimes think is the interval from one note to the next. It's like when you zoom out, it's like, when you see a picture of the planet Earth and you zoom out and you see the solar system, and then you see the galaxy after that, the way things can zoom out. Well, it's like that with composition. You've got lots of things at different levels, so at one interval to the next. So that ascending phrase has got some quite large interval jumps in it, and then when you zoom out, you've got your phrase as well. So it's like your first burst of music for the first couple of bars, and that has to get answered. And then you have your part, your whole first part of a tune, which is almost like your verse, if you like. And then it goes to your chorus, which is almost like your B part. And then once you've got those, that's like zoomed out again. And then you can go out a last time, which is what you were talking about, the arrangement, like how you do it. So you go verse, chorus, verse, chorus, verse, chorus. But did you have an intro? Does it have a middle section? So you're zooming out again. So it's got all these different kind of layers. And I think when you're up in the Cairngorms and you see these little plants and they're like a mad wee spiral, and then you see a cloud and it's the same spiral, and my friend David Russell from Highland Wildscapes, he's always talking about this idea that you've got lots of these different shapes replicated at totally different levels. One of the things I did with that opening phrase, and it's a very digital cheating type thing to do, where you take that phrase in the music software, because I'm not writing it out by hand. I don't sit with a quill or any of us. Well, some folk did it by hand, and actually everybody's got their own way of working. That's totally cool. But I've written it out on a computer and then just shifted it. Shifted the phrase, and it can sound really clunky, like real kind of cyborg, weird phrase. But if you find one that works, so I ended up moving the phrase down and down as, to see where I could make it work underneath other chords. So it retains its shape and its intervals as it moves down. So just all these wee things that are, I find them interesting, and hopefully that helps keep me interested to complete the composition. But I don't expect people to listen to it and go, oh, that's that happening there, it's just for your own interest, really, if it sort of makes some kind of sense in your own head.
Yeah, and that's a really nice explanation of the tune, and there's a cheeky thing at the end as well. There's you start the second section, but actually you end the piece with the notes D, E, E, which spell out D, which is again, it could be a bit cheesy, but it really works. It really works. So that was I know Adam Sutherland particularly appreciated that when he heard it.
I was thinking I won't tell anybody, but it's just I do these things all the time in compositions just to kind of like I don't know, make it make sense to me. But as I say, I don't expect folk to wouldn't like to sort of notice it, because there's lots of other things going on and things like that. But yeah, it's just things to keep yourself going, keep yourself entertained, as you're writing away on your own on a computer sort of thing, and you just, as I say, try and make the whole thing make sense to you.
That's brilliant. So, have you got a favourite memory from the project?
Well, I mean, the thing about it is that I had COVID at the time, and feeling sorry for myself and lying in my bed or whatever, trying to get better and stuff like that. And I think just I think it was just a total distraction. It completely took me away from that place for, at least 15, 20 minutes. I'd be completely immersed in these maps and looking at, or playing a melody and adjusting it. And then, I would be sitting there going, suddenly realizing, I don't feel very good. And then realize it's because I've been writing for an hour, you know what I mean? I need to get up and walk around. So I think, that's actually a really, it's almost like I went on a hill walk. I mean, you can see from the video there that my partner Sua and my father and I were walking up on a few different walks around about there on the other side of the Larry Grew, up in Bray Cairn Tool, the Angel's Peak, and a few of that, but not actually at the Wells of Dee. So, going onto Google Images and searching for images of these places, and sort of without going there, it's kind of a virtual exploration, and I hope that was kind of in theme, in keeping with what the project was about as a whole, was that kind of idea of a digital map, people not able to go but able to roam around the landscape. That's a happy memory, I think, just really getting into something and taking my mind away from what was happening.
That's brilliant. So this project's been a big thing for us this year. So thinking ahead to next year, what's next for Hamish? Is it more digital stuff, or are you getting back to face-to-face playing? Any new projects you're particularly excited about?
Well, there's been I've been playing with Duncan Chisholm and hit some of his live performances, and we were playing in Braemar actually recently, and that was a lovely gig. So we're back to kind of doing those, and there's a few shows coming up at Celtic Connections, one to do with the poetry of George Mackay Brown, and one to do with the landscape and the environment with David Francis, a brilliant storyteller from the Scottish Storytelling Centre. And I'm also doing a gig with Nae Plans, which is my duo with Adam Sutherland, and we've got a whole load of duos that we're taking up on stage. So it's a kind of a sort of evening of duos, and then we'll all play together, something in a big band at the end. So looking forward to those, and I'll hopefully be getting stuck into The Hill, which is, I'm hoping this track can appear on the Hill album. Which is written all about the Cairngorms and the Mona Leas, the kind of hills either side of the River Spey, because I write a lot of music about my local area, and this would be album number 4 about that. So that's starting next year, I would say. But I've had lots of commissions from people wanting pieces of music written for friends and family and special occasions and things like that, and I usually get stuck into them in a big way, working on those for a week or so. So I have a few of those to do next year. So kind of some gigs, but quite a lot of composition, I would say.
That's great, and it's really good to know that you're taking this piece forward into your work and the next album. So we really look forward to that. That's what we hoped, is that each piece would have a life that would carry on beyond this project. So. Yeah, I think
the big question I've got is the project going to run again next year? I just think it's a great thing. The model is there for a brilliant sort of original project, and I think it would be such a cool thing to see a whole load of other compositions written now that there's a way of doing it. It's really cool.
Good. We will take that on board and think about that in our committee. It's great to have that encouragement. So thanks a lot again for your time today, and good luck for next year. Thanks a lot,
Thanks
Hamish.
for having me, Steve. Cheers.
Cheers.
Absolutely brilliant stuff there from Steve and Hamish, and thanks to Hamish for making time in his busy schedule for having a chat to Steve. I've got a couple of hellos to say. Paul, who is watching on Facebook, says absolutely brilliant, such talented musicians. Mike and Leslie are joining us from Canada tonight, which is very exciting, and Sarah Morby and co, they've toasted the book with a sherry, and they're watching from Coldwell's Organic Farm. So next up is Aberdeenshire folk singer Iona Fyfe. She is rooted in the traditional singing of the northeast of Scotland, and she recently won Musician of the Year at the MG Alaba Trad Music Awards in December. She is not only a singer, but she's an advocate for Scots language, and she performs both folk songs and pop songs in Scots. She's also been a Scots song tutor for the Dee and Dawn Ceilidh Collective, and we were really delighted to welcome her on board to the project. I'll be chatting live with Iona in just a moment, but first of all, let's hear her song, The Waters Meet, which was written for the project.
Sitting down and thinking loud. I drink my coffee and you cross my mind. Feeling safe as I walk these streets. But you'll meet me where the waters meet. Meet me where the big wheels stood. While we drank our childhood. Maybe need to be discreet. When you meet me where the waters meet. And it's hard to feel I'm welcome back again. For no, I did wish rin and rin. Oh, I feed the karma, the hear back, the drama. See, take a seat and count on me. To think on you where I'll be. We'll sit here till we lose you here. When you meet me where the waters meet. And when it's time to part again, I'll kiss you like you kissed me then. Forgive me as I leave these streets. Well, meetings me where the waters meet.
Absolutely beautiful. I am so happy to be joined by Iona tonight for a wee live chat. Iona, are you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Fantastic. You're down in Glasgow just now, are you?
Yeah, I've been
Oh.
in Glasgow for years and years and years, and it feels I'm in my pal's house. I knew it's Christmassy. It's lovely.
I'm quite happy somebody else has got their Christmas decorations up and it's not just me. So tell us a wee bit about the inspiration in your song. What pins inspired you for the map?
Yeah, well, immediately from the map was put up, I was like, okay, what's around Huntly? Because at that point, I had not really been back to Huntly in like ages and ages. I think I got an hour on Christmas Day last year or so, and then I had to drive back to Glasgow. So yeah, somebody had put up a really lovely post, almost like in prose, but like a kind of poem written in Scots about the convergence of the Different and the Bogey, and that's a place where my dad would take me on walks, and then where as a teenager I would go and get up to mischief and whatever. So I wanted to write about that, and it feels like through the map I got to feel more connected to the Northeast again, but also it showed how disconnected we've all been over lockdown, and how sometimes maybe going back is actually harder than just staying put in Glasgow.
Yeah, It's amazing. Everybody's had so many different ideas about the map, and it's been fascinating to hear everybody's inspirations because they're so different. I mean, it's been a really difficult 18 months for musicians. Let's not beat around the bush, and we're not back to normal yet. But what has the project meant to you during what is probably the hardest time you've had in your career so far?
I mean, number one, it's employed so many amazing musicians and given us monthly meetings to check in with one another and like see the difficulties that Abdi's been feeling. Like I found that over lockdown I was really kind of unproductive, but hearing the idea of a group project, not an ensemble project, but a group project where we all checked in with one another on our creative ideas and shared our inspiration, that was actually really, really nice just to have like these, what we had for people listening at home was something called tutor forum meetings or forum meetings where we just kind of blethered a while and looked at the map and people identified what inspired them, and it showed us different ways that different folks thought. So like the way that Hamish writes is completely different to the way that I'd write, or the way that Jenny or yourself, Shona, would write. And it not only like showed me the strength in our individuality, but also how different we all are, but they're all valid ways of creating music. And it just showed me again that we're all really creative, but in different ways. And I hadn't experienced that in months and months because it was solo, you know, creating music in your flat to an iPhone. So it really brought together musicians that that are from different backgrounds and kind of different ages as well, different levels of experience. So being able to see things go from, you know, Adam's piece, the idea of this is what he was thinking, and then this is how it progressed, and everyone's pieces, I guess, but just seeing how different musicians work, like a fly on the wall vibe. Really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And have you worked? Has this project made you work or think about composing in a different way at all, do you think?
I think so. I work really well at deadlines. I'm not very creative myself. So when somebody imposes a deadline saying, oh, let's have this for then because we're going to teach it, it's really cool. And also using stimuli that's online and not a book and not text that already exists is really nice to have done that. I've never done that before. And to have a map which is interactive. It's like legacy content that's been created that people can still go on the map, and I'm sure they can still add stuff to the map. So I might revisit the map and decide to write something else from that. So not only is it for that one song and that one point of time, it is legacy content that musicians, even musicians that aren't involved in this particular project, could go on and find inspiration on days that maybe they're not feeling very inspired themselves.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the map itself is a piece of art, and that is going to be there for eternity, let's hope. So, I mean, it's going to inspire so many people, and I really hope that we do get a lot more. So, what's next for you, Iona? What have you got coming up? Tell us a wee bit. Anything exciting? I know you've got a new single coming out.
Yeah, so this year I worked with the Scots Language Centre to create, basically a few years ago there was a big stooshy around the fact that the Scots Language Wikipedia was made by somebody who was with all the best ideas and heart in the world, didn't have the kind of proper grammar or text or like understanding of how you would maybe write stuff down, because they had learned how to speak and write or screeve Scots online. So as a result of that, the Scots Language Centre gained quite a lot of funding in order to do projects which would create more literacy in Scots. So they created something called a style guide for people to write in Scots or whatever, and it's a really cool resource. And as part of that, they employed freelancers. So they employed a girl to write a novella in Scots called Emma Gray, and they also funded me to produce 2 new songs in Scots, but I actually managed to get 3 out of it, which was cool. And one was The Called, which was released in September, which was a total pop song in Scots. It was really cheesy, it was really rough. It wasn't supposed to be anything other than, hey, you can do something with Scots that isn't like just a ballad or bossy ballad or a traditional ballad. We can move it out of the genre. And it was really nice. It got played on Radio 2, it got played on, you know, all the different folk shows and whatever, even though it wasn't really that folky, it just showed that you can do different things with it and stick your neck out. And it's fine to stick your neck out, and if somebody doesn't like it, then that's on them, that's their issue. So Poor Ditchin' Boy is a translation of Richard Thompson's 1972 song that he wrote on his debut album, Henry the Human Fly. And he wrote it after reading Sunset Song, which a lot of the students in Scotland will have been subjected to during their standard grades. But as an adult, going back over and reading Sunset Song, it's really different. But he wrote it after apparently reading the Hale book. So I thought it felt fitting to kind of tack his song and put it back into Scots. And I've got Michael Biggins on there, and Charlie Stewart on the electric double bass, and Graham Rory on mandolin and electric guitar and strings. So like all the musicians, you know, we managed to, between lockdowns, meet up and arrange and make music, and that was funded by the Scots Language Centre. So that's coming out on the 20th of December. And I guess we sat on it for a while, but I just didn't know when was the right time to put things out, because right now you just don't know what's going to happen. If you can, you know, it's a single, so you don't need an album launch tour or anything. But I always like to tie in single launches with things that are happening. So, for example, the Aberdeen Football Club thing, the Northern Lights came out when that was launched. The Wild Geese came out when the Spotify Scots language thing was launched. I like to tie it in with an event or something. So I guess I'm tying this in with the Musician of the Year thing, which was really nice to win. But I've kind of spent all week with imposter syndrome. But we should talk about it. You know, that it's you do feel impostery when you're a singer and you're up against amazing musicians, and then you win because of mailing lists and all that. But I've felt a bit weird this week, but maybe once I start making more music, I'll feel better.
Yeah, I think we just need to get back to normal. I think every musician just is absolutely wanting to get out there and gig again. But thank you so much, Iona, for joining us, and I'm sure that we'll see you somewhere soon. Hopefully, we'll see you gigging out and about, and look out for a single as well. So I'm going to pass over to Steve, who is going to introduce our next guest.
And it's my privilege to introduce Paul Anderson. Paul will be known to many of you for his many years of work in the tradition of Scots fiddling, and he has been based in and around Thailand in this area for a very long time. So he takes a lot of his personal musical inspiration from this area. It's been a big year for Paul. He was awarded the MBE and an honorary doctorate from Robert Gordon's University. So congratulations, Paul, for that. And he was so inspired by the project that instead of writing one tune, he wrote three, which is great. So we're going to hear all three of those. First of all, The Death of Lulach at Essie, and secondly, Hosie's Well, and then thirdly, Millert Rhynie. And we'll talk about those three tunes and their origins after you've heard them played. My apologies. I think I put myself on mute so I could listen to the music. I apologise. So yeah, thanks very much for those 3 tunes. Tell us a bit about the inspiration that you drew from the map for those 3 tunes.
Well, there was plenty of inspiration, really. There was a lot of stuff I probably could have decided to write about, but it was really Hosie's Well was the first one. I'd never heard of that, and it's not too far for I comfy, to be honest. I mean, it's only, you can be up at it within about an hour and a half for the house, so you can get up to the hill path up Benahee and walk up, and I'd never heard of that anywhere. So that was the first thing, and initially I thought that would make quite a good song, and I toyed with the idea of maybe writing lyrics for it, but then I decided, there's real singers are actually writing songs as it is, and but the tune felt like I was trying to write something that could possibly have lyrics, and then it ended up being a slow strathspey, because I kind of thought they're nice, commonly composed nowadays, so I thought, maybe it's unfair on everybody else. I just thought probably nobody else would write a slow strathspey, so I thought it might be just a wee bit different from what everybody else was doing. But in the course of some of the meetings we had, there was one of the folk that contributed, Alan Macintosh, mentioned about maybe meeting up, and he spoke about his grandfather, who was Millert or Rhynie, and then part of that conversation mentioned about possibly wandering up to see for the Battle of Essie was where Lulach was killed in 1058, and it was the kind of thing that just it usually sparks up my imagination. So I went up for a look on a pouring weekday. Shona was keen enough, but the boys, you should have face like fizz, they were not happy, hauled up in a day of pouring rain. It was very atmospheric, and I got quite a lot out of that. It does not look like anything really when you get there. Nobody would ever say, "Oh, there's been something happened here," but indeed it maybe didn't, because it could have been equally just about a mile away. It's one of these things for they're not really very sure exactly what it was, but the sense of that history and something that wasn't a big battle in the scheme of things, but actually it was a pivotal bit of history, that really got me thinking. So I decided I'd quite like to maybe touch on a couple of things, and the reason for the third tune was because the slow strathspey, Hosie's Well, kind of felt like it was left hanging, and it felt like it didn't really resolve properly. So I felt like a reel would finish it off properly. In fact, so I mean, I didn't hate to go and write 3 tunes, but I certainly wrote the 2 and felt I've got to write something to finish it off. And Millert was such a character. It felt like he really could have had a bothy ballad, and sort of deserved a bothy ballad, but I didn't think anybody else was writing anything for him. So I thought, I'll just write a tune called Millert or Rhynie. So that's really why I settled in them. But equally, there was lots of stuff that I could have gone for. I mean, nobody's picked on things that I felt at one point that might be my subject matter. But luckily, I don't think anybody clashed in any of these bits of inspiration. So there you are.
That's fantastic. And actually, if anyone wants to go to our YouTube channel, you can actually see Paul on site playing some of these tunes at the places that inspired them. You can kind of hear it in the music, like the first tune, The Death of Lulach Essie. I mean, it sounds really dark. It's very minor. Sounds like lots of people are going to die. And the next one, Hosie's Well, it's the actual legend behind it is when you read it, it's a bit sad, but that sounds a little bit more upbeat and hopeful, which is nice. And the last piece about the Millert is just, you can just imagine this really cheeky character. It sounds like he was an amazing character. You kind of hear that in the music. So yeah, thanks for that. So what did this project mean for you sort of in lockdown? As Shona said, it's been a very difficult year, and this project was a big part of it, big part of the year for many of us.
Aye, well, it's been, I mean, I don't think anybody could have imagined that this situation would ever happen in their lifetime. Certainly 3 years ago, could you ever think that we would be still sitting here almost 2 years later? I certainly wouldn't have done. But early on, I found myself just making a point of keeping myself busy. just for my own amusement. So I recorded a lot of music. I mean, some of the great fiddle composers, like a Marshall and Gow and Skinner, I recorded all their tunes and stuck them on YouTube just to keep myself busy. I mean, I kind of wished I hadn't at some points, because I was like, oh my God, Skinner, some of his stuff was a bit of a chore from time to time, but things like that kept me busy. We did kind of online concerts every Friday, which we're still doing. That was 89, I think we did. On Friday nights, so these things have just kept me going. But that's really been a big effort for me to go and do that, rather than sitting feeling sorry for myself. You kind of go and gig, so it was a means of trying to do something. But when this came out along, it was a real focus. So I found it was that you felt like you were doing something tangible. You certainly kind of go and visit one of your mates that have been involved. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw one of these guys in person. It's certainly over 2 years, and quite often I didn't see them. That's why the trads are quite good fun. I end up in the bar. That's where I see some of these folks that I didn't see for 1 year or the next. So it's been good to be able to check in with folk and hear what they're saying and hear what they're thinking. And it's quite inspiring, actually, just hearing how other folk work. I found it. I mean, I find it difficult to tell folk how I work. I just almost feel like I didn't write on it, and it just feels like it's coming out of the ether. I feel like a bit of a fraud sometimes. That well, did I hear that somewhere else? But other folk have got very different ways of writing, and it's like documentaries on Paul Simon creating Graceland. I find it really interesting hearing folk talk about how they write music and how they go about it, and not because I'm tried to copy how they do it. I just find it an interesting process. So it's been really good. I've really enjoyed it, and I've looked forward to every part. It's just a bit of I mean, it's great we've got to this stage, because I think it's been an amazingly successful project to run. But it's a shame it's kind of rounding up. You'll need to go and write up another application, Steve. How would you fancy that? Creative Scotland. It's a lot of fun. I think you'll agree.
Yeah, moving swiftly on. So what next for Paul then?
At the minute we're kind of looking like, well, we might be not doing very much with the way the Omicron's going, but it'll be much the same sort of thing. I mean, you've got to hope that things like the Neil Gow Festival will actually be able to go to that. I usually have quite a lot of burn suppers, but I had one biggie cancelled. I mean, I've been to it 21 times, and they cancelled it. Not so much because they felt it was unwise, but folk didn't feel safe enough to go. And I found that quite interesting, because that particular one's got a 15-year waiting list to be a member to go to the Burn Supper. And if you're finding folk that are enthusiastic as that just didn't feel safe, I mean, it's maybe a symptom you're going to see in other things that you have to maybe scale back how things go. But yeah, I've just had a book and an album come out based on Iona. So that's just kind of been launched. Well, it was launched in September, but we only just got the stuff now. The slowest launch in history. Months after it was actually launched, we finally got. So there's a book of paintings and poems by John Lowry Morrison, who does a lot of work in Iona, and Francie Devine, Irish poet, and I wrote an album of music. So that's just come out. So that's quite exciting. So that's kind of now going ahead. And then I've recorded an album of Peter Milne and Scott Skinner tunes that will get around to bringing out next year at some point. But they were recorded on their own fiddles, or fiddles that they had at one point. So that was quite an interesting project to do. So we'll see how we get on with that. But in the meantime, that's kind of it, really.
That's fantastic. Well, thanks very much for all your contributions and your enthusiasm for this project.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thanks very much, Steve. We'll see you later. See you guys.
And so I'm going to hand back to Shona now, who's going to introduce our final guest in the first half.
Thanks very much, Steve. I want to say hello to Grace Banks, who is watching on Facebook as well. She says, this is fab. And Grace was one of our local tutors who was involved in the project. So thanks for watching, Grace. So yeah, we have got one more guest before we are having a wee 5-minute break. Adam Sutherland is a fiddler from the South Shores of Loch Ness. He is one of Scotland's most exciting fiddle players and composers on the scene today, and he's played with bands such as Session A9, Peatbog Fairies, Croft Number 5 and the Treacherous Orchestra, but perhaps his tunes are his most impressive legacy. They're played in music sessions all over the world and have truly entered the tradition. I'm going to talk to Adam in a minute, but first of all, let's hear his composition for the project, The Last Tree in the Cabrach.
Hello. I just want to say what an absolute joy and a privilege it's been to be invited to be part of our Living Rivers and Glens amazing community project. And it's been so nice to meet all the participants and all the team behind it. It's just been a joy. So thank you for having me. I'm going to play you an arrangement of the piece that I ended up writing. The piece is called The Last Tree in Cabrach, ? And you can see that on the interactive map, the place, and it's just gorgeous. I went there and it was beautiful. So I'm trying to kind of give a sense of this openness in this music. And the question mark in the title refers to just maybe the potential for the use, not just of these big open spaces in Cabrach, but in other parts of Scotland. And maybe, you know, what should we do with those? All right, and I'm gonna start off with the arrangement, playing a harmony line, actually, which I originally just wrote to try and accompany the tune, but I kind of thought, I quite like that on its own. So it's got lots of long notes. So again, I hope to get a sense of space. So I'll play the harmony line for a bit, muck around a bit, and then play the tune. I'm just going to play along with my computer. There's a speaker just out of shot here, and I hope that comes across okay. So here we go. Last Tree in Cabrach, ?
amazing. That was absolutely beautiful. And I am delighted to be joined by Adam now to have a quick chat. Hi, Adam. How are you?
Hi, Shona. I'm doing very well, thank you. Happy to be here.
Yeah, it's lovely to have you. So you spoke a wee bit about your inspiration from the map. Can you tell us a wee bit more about the sites that inspired you?
Yeah, well, I just took a look at the map, the amazing map right at the start, and that thing is just amazing. For us, just want to say that's just such a beautiful idea. And yeah, I just sitting down in Glasgow, just felt a little bit far away, and like imposter syndrome. I'm like, how can I possibly write something that's inspired by the Northeast? And I'm sitting above the Park Bar in the West End of Glasgow. Felt like a bit like I need to kind of fill that integrity deficit. So the last tree in Cabrach, before I even knew anything about it, just caught my attention just from a purely nostalgic kind of point. I thought, sounds like a good tune name, and I thought I want to learn more. So took a drive up there and had a lovely day hanging out with Alan Carr, Avril Blackhall, Janet Fitton, and Ron Brander, who took me there with Alan and told me all about the history of the area. He has loads of information and knowledge about it, and yeah, so I just went there and I was really taken with the landscape. It was like almost like lunar, almost like some other planet. I just absolutely loved it. And then I learned more about it and how it used to be full of people, it used to be full of activity, and then not anymore. And we had a big conversation about that, and all of us up there and also speaking about what maybe should the landscape look like in the future, an imaginative step. So so I ended up just writing about that, and I tried to make the tune describe the vastness of the place. I tried to have long notes in the first part, try and just communicate that. And when I wrote that tune, I was looking at a bit of video footage that I took when I was there. So I was really trying to be as directly inspired from it as possible, so that I didn't feel like a fraud, you know. So yeah, that's how I got started with that.
Amazing. And tell us a wee bit about how you actually went about composing it, because it's a bit of an epic, if I say so myself. There's a bit more going on than just a fiddle in there. Can you tell us a wee bit about that?
Well, yeah, like at the start of the whole pandemic, I obviously lost all my performing work, like everyone else, and I kind of just turned inwards and started writing. I've always wanted to write bigger pieces of music. I've always written music, but I've just always wanted to write stuff that's not just a fiddle tune. So I started to kind of try to learn how to use software on my Mac, like this program called Logic Pro, and I bought this orchestral library, which I think Charlie's just bought as well. It's called by a company called Spitfire Audio, where what you're listening to there was samples of the BBC Symphony Orchestra. I've always wanted to write for an orchestra, and suddenly this technology is available where you can start to kind of get as close as you ever can if you don't happen to have your own orchestra, which I don't. So I just fell in love with that and started trying to write bigger pieces. And I wrote a charity single during the pandemic for a friend of mine who's passed away recently, Fatma Nielsen. We wrote a big charity thing. So for me, this project, well, I was just so happy to be asked to do it, actually, but it was an opportunity for me to try and do something bigger again creatively. And so that's what you're hearing there about all those samples. So I was just really glad to have a chance to try and throw all that out there. And yeah, it's so much fun.
Yeah, I mean, as awful as it was at the time that all of the musicians lost their work, you know, it has actually kind of focused us a wee bit, and it's amazing that you've been able to kind of get to grips with this software and stuff. I mean, it's way beyond me completely, but I mean, it's not all been bad. Surely, it's been quite nice to see how folk have reacted in the project as well. And I mean, you've got like Paul just playing a simple melody by himself, and then we've got orchestrations and all sorts. Have you got a favourite memory from the project?
I actually think just that lovely day out for me and meeting the participants in person. Having said that, it was also really nice to meet them all in the various online things which you guys facilitated really well for everyone. So, you know, without that infrastructure, it certainly wouldn't have been so good. But yeah, a lovely day in the northeast, just being there and, you know, feeling the, that sounds really cheesy, just feeling the actual Cabrach wind, you know, on my face. Sorry, that's awful cheese. But I mean it, you know, I'm meeting people.
Yeah.
That was fun.
Yeah, absolutely. So what's next for you, Adam? Have you got anything in the pipeline?
Well, I'd like to release this track at some point, and I want to get humans to play it. Apparently that's what you're supposed to do with these orchestral libraries. You're supposed to like use them to write the music so you can get a sense of it, and then find actual humans to play them. So that's probably quite a reasonably large task. But I'd like to try and find, I actually might try and get in touch with maybe Cabrach Trust. I've been pointed towards them. I haven't contacted them yet. Maybe they're listening. If so, hello. And see if they fancy maybe helping me make that a bit of a reality. I don't know if you can hire an entire orchestra, but there's this orchestra called the Scottish Session Orchestra based in Glasgow, and they like a bunch of soloists and orchestral leaders, and they do lots of film soundtrack recording, and you can hire them to record your piece for a day. I don't know how much it is yet, but I'm kind of looking into it. And they can like double up their parts and record the same parts again, and their total, like they recorded like on like Hans Zimmer's tracks, and they're absolutely like, but apparently you can actually hire them. So I'm kind of thinking, maybe, I don't know. So maybe I can find some money with some support, I should say. Financial support. That's a better way of putting it. Maybe I could do that. So I'd love to try and make that a reality.
That's amazing. Well, we might need to ask Steve Garrett on the committee to get another application on the go, since he did such a wonderful job for the Living Rivers and Glens project. Thank you so much for joining, Adam, and all the best with finding that orchestra. We look forward to meeting it in person. Yeah, absolutely. So we are at the end of our first half. If you have enjoyed tonight, remember you can go to our website, www.ddoncaileycollective.com. You can order the book that has got all of these tunes and songs from tonight in it. And you can also listen to the music again from there. You can download it. And of course, if you have enjoyed tonight as well, head to the musicians' websites and support them directly, because as we all know, this difficult period for musicians is not over yet. We're far from getting back to normal. So thanks very much to our guests in the first half. We are going to have a 5-minute comfort break. So go and make yourself a cup of tea or pour yourself a dram, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes for some more great tunes and songs.
So welcome back. Thanks very much for sticking with us. We're having a lovely evening going through the music and interviewing the musicians to get some backgrounds behind it. And next up is Jenny Sturgeon. So Jenny's originally from Afford, and she now lives in Shetland for convenience. And she's very connected to this area. One of her most recent works is an album called The Living Mountain, which has been received very well, inspired by the works of Nan Shepherd. And she's also been touring recently with Northern Flyaway, inspired by birds, and also with Salthouse. So Jenny can't be with us tonight, so we'll be having another pre-recorded interview. But first of all, we'll hear her beautiful song, Spinning Discs, which is inspired by lots of references around the map. So here's Jenny Sturgeon and Spinning Discs.
Reach
as I mentioned earlier, Jenny won't be able to be with us tonight, but we do have a pre-recorded interview where we went into the inspiration behind the tune from the map, and also some of the music, looking at some of the music. So here's our pre-recorded interview with Jenny. So thanks for joining us, Jenny. That was a lovely piece of music, and lovely to hear it again and watch you perform it. So it'd be great to hear you talk a little bit about the inspiration you got from the map and how that influenced the tune.
Yeah, so I suppose first of all I wanted to make sure I'd gone through every single thing that was on the map when it came to actually writing, and so I started making notes. I went and visited every single site on the map and read the poem, or listened to the field recording, or saw the artwork, and just wrote down a couple of words based on every single one of those points on the map. And some of it was direct lifts from the poetry people had written or the prose they'd written, and some of it was just the first thing that came into my mind when I heard the chaffinches singing or saw a photograph of the clouds, and ended up with several pages of stuff, of words. And then it was a case of, I think at that point I sort of decided, actually I'm gonna go with this rather than taking inspiration from just one or a couple of the different pieces that were on the map. I just took a little bit from every single one. So some of them are maybe more obvious than others based on the map. You know, it could be, as I said, a line of poetry or something. But yeah, it was kind of just a bit of an amalgam of all of those things.
No, it's lovely, and it comes across nicely in the lyrics of the tune, because you talk about the rivers and the trees and the rocks and the moss, and the experience, but also the experience of being outside. That you know, during lockdown, it was good for us to be out and just sort of breathe and take it all in. So, so I think
there's definitely a thread of, obviously people were getting inspired by the outdoor world, and there was definitely a lot of themes that kept coming up, and it was like you're saying, that very much taking time and being in that space and breathing in that space and really noticing different things. Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, because it's kind of a summary of the map. We intentionally kind of put it at the end of the book and at the end of the sort of album, if you will, of stuff we put together, because it's like wraps it up really nicely. You know, it's just like we finished wandering and this is what we've seen and heard, you know. So,
nice.
Very good. So yeah, on the music itself, it feels very natural. But then, you know, I went through the exercise with Pete Stollery transposing it. It's kind of interesting. It's in 7/8, and because of the way you set up your guitar with the open tuning and the two capos, it's actually got what most people might think of as quite complex chords, but it's not that complex to play. Although the finger picking is, but not so much on the left hand on the fretboard. But it just sounds beautiful. It kind of floats with that. You know, guitar rhythm, and then with the longer vocal notes over the top, it just kind of floats. So, how did you land on that?
It was, I suppose, there was a piece that somebody had submitted, played on the harp, and that was kind of bubbling away. It was to do with the river or the burn just by their house, and so that was kind of the initial inspiration. This kind of like bubbling sound, which I find you kind of get through the finger picking style. And I happened to just have the two capos on the guitar at that point on the fretboard and just started noodling around, and that's what kind of came. I suppose it was sort of that pattern came first, and then it was a case of lifting lines that would fit in with that pattern. And to be honest, it wasn't until I got quite far on into it that I realised it was in 7, and that's maybe not the easiest thing for inclusion of getting everybody to play along, but hopefully it will be a little bit of a challenge and a worthwhile challenge for people. And actually, I think it can also be put into more standard timing and work as well.
Yeah, it feels very natural, and I think maybe I prefer to think of it as a nice step up for folk just to get used to playing in that slightly irregular meter. But no, it's lovely. It really works really well. And I think it works nicely on the guitar as well, because it's quite gentle, the way, like I say, it ripples along quite nicely on the guitar. If you try playing that pattern on a piano or something, it might be a little bit more in your face. So it's lovely the way it ripples along. It's beautiful. So what's this? It's been a tough year. It's been great you've been out gigging again, but it has been a tough year prior to that. So what did this project mean for you during the pandemic, and also what other things, how else did you respond to the pandemic?
I think this project was great, and there's been lots of lovely little projects that have kind of come out of this weird time that we've had. And something that was lovely about this one in particular was being able to link up with lots of people. So folk who were composing, but also who were contributing to the map and the workshops and the inspiration workshops and things. It was just a really lovely marker in the calendar almost of, and seeing that progression of everybody else's pieces and getting to interact with the map itself. It really just was a lovely opportunity to be creative, but without it being too big a project and feeling too overwhelming. So yeah, it's been really good fun.
That's good. And any other projects or ways of working that you found you developed during lockdown in response?
Yeah, lots of recording and Zoom collaborations, lots of songwriting collaborations on Zoom. Lots of really feel like I've upped my game in terms of recording. Recorded several albums from my little studio space here up in Shetland, and just I think it's opened up possibilities for working with other people where we're all quite in different locations. Yeah. And previously, I think I would have thought I needed to be in the same space as somebody in order to create music or record. But actually, I think everybody's learned that you can do things over the internet, and it's maybe not quite the same, but actually you can still get really good results, and which is lovely, especially being based up in Shetland, where it's kind of slightly out on a limb.
Yeah, I went to a Chris Drever concert once, and he said he'd moved to Shetland for convenience.
Yeah,
the dry way he has. So yeah, so I think it helps obviously if you know the people a little bit first before you work remotely. But once if you got that relationship, then yeah, it actually has been a positive in a way.
Yeah.
Learning these new ways of working. So that's good. Have you got any sort of favourite memories from the project then?
I think probably having the first sort of inspiration workshop session, and there were just, I don't know, five or so, 7 people or something in the workshop, but it was lovely to hear and get feedback from people at that point in the process. I think I'd been really busy up until the point of that workshop, and that morning I'd sat down and gone, right, I need to be able to present something today, and I haven't got anything yet, and I haven't spent any time with the map, so having like a whole, I think the workshop was in the evening, so it was like a whole day working on that and sharing, because it was obviously very fresh in my mind as well, sharing with the participants in the inspiration workshop what I'd come across, or the point at which I was with the song was really useful and really interesting, because as a creator you don't often get to share things at that point when they're very fresh. It's very new. I still don't know how to play it. I still don't know what the melody is going to be or how to finish the other 2 verses and chorus. But to get that feedback from people was really interesting and really useful.
Yeah, and I think that will stick with some of the other participants, because it's very rare for all of us that it's quite raw to open up a creative process that early, but it's quite special. If you have that trust, you can do that. And I think a lot of the participants really appreciated that. So yeah, thanks for that, Jenny. So yeah, what next? You've managed to be very productive during this past year, and just been busy gigging. So what's next on the plan for Jenny?
A little bit of downtime. And then in the new year, I've got a fair bit of recording with Salthouse and also going on tour with them again. At the moment, just before we started chatting, I've just been preparing a new piece that's going to get showcased at the Celtic Connections opening night. So that'll be my first gig of 2022. And then, just lots of gigs and more of that really, more touring of the Living Mountain and various other bits and bobs. So just looking forward to it.
Lovely. Well, hopefully the negative tests will continue throughout all that. So
touch wood, fingers crossed.
So thanks very much for joining us, Jenny, and it's been really good to hear your perspectives on your song and the project.
Well, thanks so much for getting me involved with the whole thing. I hope there's more things that come out of this project in the future, because it's brilliant. So
thank you so much.
What a wonderful song from Jenny, and a really interesting interview as well. And as we've heard all along, everybody's hoping that there's more of this happening. So we're going to have to get our heads together, the subcommittee and the committee for the Dee and Don Ceilidh Collective, and see what we can do here. Next up, we have Arthur Coates. And Arthur is actually our youngest composer on the project, but do not let that fool you, because he is a multi-instrumentalist. And he studied at the prestigious Aberdeen City Music School, where he studied fiddle and piano. He's now a full-time musician, and his debut solo album Focus was released in 2019, and it featured original compositions by Arthur. I'll talk to him just in a minute, but first let's have a listen to his composition for the project, The Picardy Stone. Brilliant stuff there from Arthur Coates. How fantastic was that? And I am delighted to be joined by Arthur now. Are you there, Arthur?
I'm here.
Yeah.
Hello.
Great to see you. Thanks for that absolutely brilliant piece of music. Can you tell us a wee bit more about your inspiration, about the pins on the map that you took as inspiration for that piece of music?
Yeah, so initially it was I was inspired by Steve's input with the glacial sounds, and it kind of brought to me a chord sequence on the guitar, which was a little bit really. It was eventually in the end I didn't end up using it, but it sort of inspired the intro and outro sections at the start and obviously at the start and end of the piece. But then it became more apparent to me that this was quite an important, I'm pointing towards Speaker Stone from where I am, important local thing. It's very close, couple of hundred feet from a Don tributary. So it's, I thought that was an interesting mark in the landscape. You know, it's been there for well over 1,000 years. It's one of the oldest, carved stones that's still in its original spot. And it seemed to me to, much as everything around is very steady, it's always changing. You know, we see around here the agricultural land is quite a new thing, obviously, but the stone's been there before that. It's been there before the hill fort that's there, and it's very enduring, I think. So that really inspired me to try to do something.
Yeah, it's amazing. It was lovely to see the actual Picardy stone in your wee video there, just to give folks a flavour of it. And one thing that I hope with the map as well is that when folk look at it and go and explore it, that it'll maybe inspire them to go and visit these places that they might not have known about before as well. So yeah, thanks very much for that. So what did this project actually mean to you personally? Because as we've mentioned, it's been a really hard period for musicians. So you're a full-time musician starting out in your career. So what did it mean to you to be involved in the project?
Well, apart from the obvious financial side, which is that's very helpful. Obviously, it's great to because we're having Zoom meetings all the time. It's great to connect with outside people on a fairly regular basis. Is just good for the soul, probably. Even just now, I probably should have mentioned it earlier, but just with the storm that just happened, the Picardy stone stands in an avenue of trees that are a couple of 100 years old, and just 15 of them just blew over right next to it, literally feet from it. So it's that's another enduring side of it. But yeah, I think that for me is the biggest part, is connecting with people on a regular basis, and we're sharing ideas, and that's a really I didn't get to do that in any other kind of circumstance.
Yeah, and not only share ideas with your fellow composers and tutors, but also with all the participants who have been so supportive of the project, and hopefully will go out and share all the tunes and sessions as well. So have you got a favourite memory of the project at all?
Of the project? Yeah, you know, it's been quite a long project, I think. It feels a long time ago when we were, sitting in the first meeting and thinking, oh my God, how is this going to come together? And I think it was I think it's that time when I did a workshop at the Sutherland Food and Music Festival, and it's probably that was the first time anyone had heard it. I think it was actually before I recorded it, maybe. I can't really remember. And then it was a bit daunting to me to play it and see if folks liked it a little bit. And yeah, that was sticks in my mind.
Yeah, I should have mentioned that we had a wee showcase and a couple of workshops at the Sutherland Food and Music Festival in September, and Grace Banks came along and taught a song, and Arthur came along and taught his tune, The Picardy Stone, and it was quite emotional actually to hear all those folks that had come along to your workshop get together and play this tune to an audience. I don't know how it felt for you, Arthur, but certainly for me it was. It felt like we were getting back to some sort of normality, and just to hear a piece in the flesh, it was brilliant. So what's next for you? What else have you got in the pipeline? What's coming up in the new year?
New year. I'm gonna do hopefully a new album, which is a bit different to the last one. I think that this piece is gonna be on it. As of right now, it's track 7 or something. And then hopefully do a trio with I play with a guitar player called Karin, and we're gonna do a trio thing. it's all very in the pipeline, and play my cards close.
That sounds amazing. We'll definitely keep updated with you and let us know how things are going, and we'll share that as widely as we can. So thank you very much, Arthur, for joining us and for that video as well. And I'm going to hand back to Steve, who is going to introduce our next guest.
Yes, and I'm delighted to tell you that our next composer is actually Shona. So Shona Donaldson is a renowned Scots singer, and has won the Scots Singer of the Year at the Trad Awards, and also has been the first female bothy ballad champion of champions. So congratulations, Shona. She's a great bearer of the tradition, but also writes beautiful new tunes. So this is the song she wrote for our project, and it's called Dear Mother, and it's inspired by some trees that are near my house, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Dear Mither, I hope this letter finds you well. It's been a year since I heard you and Dad and all the parents. I'm sorry I hadn't found the time to reply to your last letter last inside. Forgive me, dear Mother. I'm doing grand and working hard. The folk are friendly here as well, but nothing like the couthy country chills. The view outside is near the same, and I miss the house and the trees ahead. Dear brother, you're our young to mind on me. I left you fully a same old goud afore you were but 12 years old. And maybe a day when you're a man, you'll arrive over here with a pan in your hand. Dear father, the puke stop at full seeds, and there's big giants over here. You've never seen the like I fear. So bring them on and they'll grow tall to remind you oh your lunacy small. Dear Jeannie, I'll mind on you for all my days. We've wandered by the Sutherland burn to watch the summer change and turn. You'll maybe oft times think on me when walking by yon redwood trees, and I canna write any mail, you see, for thinking on you blears my een. Love, Jamie.
Wow, that always gets me. So I'll just take a moment. And now Shona is going to join me and we'll discuss the inspiration behind the tune. So Shona, please tell people the story behind the tune and where you got the inspiration from the map.
Yeah, so when I first looked at the map, naturally I looked at what was close to me here in Tarland, and sorry, that's my phone ringing now. Nobody ever phones me on my landline, and now everybody wants to get hold of me. Yeah, the first one that I looked at actually was the Seven Red Giants, which is on the Aboyne Castle estate, and I didn't actually know at the time that it was yourself, Steve, that put that up. And the Seven Red Giants are redwood trees. And it got me thinking, how on earth did California redwoods get to Aboyne? So I set myself a wee task of finding that out. And luckily enough, I have a friend that works in the Aboyne Castle estate office. So I sent her a wee email and said, do you know anything about this? And she happened to speak to the Marquis of Huntly's son, who did a little bit of research and told me that it was one of the Marquises of Huntly in the 1800s that had been over to California and took back about 1,000, I think it was, seeds. And they were split between the Aboyne Castle estate and also his estate down in Peterborough. And I actually went and Googled this estate in Peterborough, and it's now a very posh hotel, but it's famed for its redwood trees. So I must see if Paul will take me on a wee holiday down to Peterborough to a posh hotel so I can visit the brothers and sisters of the trees at Aboyne. But it wasn't a particularly romantic story. You couldn't really make a song out of that. So it got me thinking about, you know, what would happen if a had gone over to California to make his fortune in the California gold rush and had sent back some seeds to his family. And of course, at that time, there was no Facebook or Zoom meetings or WhatsApp, so the only way that you could communicate was by letter. So it seemed quite a natural way for me to write it in a letter form. So that's where the inspiration for it came from. And it came out quite quick, actually. Usually you've got snippets of songs and tunes in your head that maybe never see the light of day, or maybe you'll go back to a couple of years later and work on. But this song I think it took me about an hour and a half to come up with, and it was pretty much there. I had to do a bit of work on it, but yeah, it's funny the way these things work. You never quite know how it's going to go.
So a couple of things about the post. First of all, I lived close to these trees, but I'd never noticed them before lockdown. And then once I posted them, Paul Anderson, his family used to have cows in the field right next to them. He's lived all his life. He'd never noticed them. So they're quite good, and these things are massive. So it's quite a good illustration of how lockdown made us see things different ways when the world stopped and we actually started paying attention. And then another thing for me, I've actually lived in California twice. So seeing the redwoods, I actually wondered if they were homesick. And then when Shona wrote her song, it was like, well, I was working over there as a geologist. So a couple of times I was the homesick guy writing letters home. So the tune's very meaningful to me, and it's very beautiful. And I know it moves other people to tears, like Grace Banks, who taught it at the workshop in Thailand. So you really found some magic there. We had a bit of fun as well transcribing it, because it sounds quite simple, but actually writing it down turned out it keeps changing time signature. And so for musicians amongst you, we were sort of bashing our head against the wall, going 1, 2, and 3, and counting for like 2 days here and in Thailand before we finally figured it out. So what's for you, Shona? What's this project meant during lockdown?
Yeah, well, I've kind of come at it 2 ways, because as well as being a composer, I've been project manager for the project. So I've always got 2 hats on all the time. But I mean, as a composer, the project came along where obviously we had no work whatsoever. And I went through a period early on in the lockdown of feeling really quite depressed about not being creative. You know, social media is a great thing, but it's not the be all and end all. And I would go on and see all these amazing musicians that were putting out all these great new songs and collaborations and doing all these amazing things. And I just couldn't face it myself. I didn't have that spark early on in the lockdown. And actually, to be involved in the project kind of gave me a wee bit of a kick up the bum, to be honest, to get going again. And it really has sparked me to write songs during the lockdown, which I don't think I would have done necessarily before. It's given me the inspiration to write the songs as well. And it really has created a bit of a community throughout the project, not only because we get to see the composers and the subcommittee and the tutors every month, but we meet the participants as well. And it really has felt like a wee community that we've created, which has been lovely.
Yeah, so do you see potential for these new ways of working to carry on next year, perhaps?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, certainly myself. I mean, I'm quite simplistic when it comes to technology, and it's been a bit of a challenge for me to record things as well, and even to try and transcribe stuff, because I never have to do that. So even having to do that for the legacy book was a bit of a challenge, one that I did not overcome, actually. And one that Paul struggled to overcome with as well. And it got to the point that we just said, here you go, Steve, see what you can do with that. And thankfully you worked your magic on it. But yeah, I mean, certainly I'm going to be much happier working with technology now than I was at the start of the lockdown. So that's been a bonus for me.
Yeah, I think we've all built our fluency over the past year. Any special memory for you from the project? Anything that stands out?
I don't know if I could pick one. I mean, I think the first time that I heard everybody's pieces was quite amazing, because we'd spoken about this project for so long. We'd had so many committee meetings, so many things to figure out, and then to actually physically hear them in your ears for the first time was amazing. I mean, we went to the inspiration workshops and the composition workshops, but until you actually finally hear the finished product, it was just amazing. And I thought that yeah, we've done something pretty good here.
Yeah, lovely. So what next for Shona?
Oh, well, as well as performing with Paul, we have been doing our Live from the Lounge Facebook concerts every single Friday since lockdown began. And I think you mentioned we'll be doing number 90 on Friday. We've done 90 of them. So that's been quite a feat, because we do new music every week. So I do 4 new songs every week. So that's quite a lot of songs. But it has given me a bit of motivation to get going with that. Sometimes you can't face it, but yeah, it's almost like getting out in front of an audience, you know. It kind of gives you that boost. And it actually gives me a reason to put my makeup on and to get properly dressed on a Friday afternoon, which is really nice. I am also going to be just digging my heels in and writing a bit more, because I haven't really done an awful lot of that recently. We've got a 14-year-old and an 11-year-old, so that takes up quite a lot of my time. So I'm hoping to get back into that. And I also organise the Tarland Food and Music Festival, so we're just starting to get ready for 2022.
Fantastic. So thank you very much, Shona, for your outstanding work as project manager, but thank you especially for the beautiful tune and song you've written for us.
You're welcome. Thanks, Steve.
So next up, we have Charlie McKerron with Pete MacCallum. And Charlie will be known to many of you. I first heard his music when my family and I moved to Scotland first. We had a house with a bothy, and I used to sit by the peat fire with a glass of single malt, listening to Cabrach. So it's a real privilege to be engaged with Charlie on this project. And as well as Cabrach, you'll know his work with Session A9 and playing with some other excellent players such as Tamidi, Ross Ainsley, and many others. And he's joined on this piece by Pete MacCallum. Pete's an outstanding guitarist, and he's accompanying Charlie on this track, and we'll talk about how they put the accompaniment music together later during the interview. And this piece is a bit like Jenny's in his response to the whole map. And so you'll hear some ambient sounds from the ringing stone and from ice quakes and from birdsong, which are part of this when you listen to it in the online version. So anyway, here is Charlie McKerron and Pete MacCallum and the musical map. Fantastic. So next we do have Charlie and Pete's guest, and we'll be able to have an interview discussing that amazing piece of music. So Charlie, first of all, can you tell us a little bit about your inspiration from the map with the bird song and the ringing stone and the ice quake sound, and how you put music together?
Hi, Steve. I was inspired by the map, and I thought visually and from audio tracks as well, it was an amazing thing, and everyone said that. And for me, I just realised there was so much sound on the actual from video clips to videos even of the beehive, for example. So that was quite a good inspiration to me. I said, right, well, there's a drone immediately and from the bees, and I did pick up on quite a few of the bird songs, and I did a thing where I was changing the pitch to try and understand some of the melody, the melodic phrases these amazing creatures are emitting, So that was really interesting for me, and then I started to get ideas from it, and I said, well, that's actually a musical phrase there, and that could lead you as a, if you look at call and response in music or questions and answers, it can trigger off a response to something. And so I looked at that as well. And then there's another great technique you can use, which is you can half the speed of a track, and it really makes things sound amazing also. And I was using that to increase the option of listening and working at melodies from the birds. So a lot of people in the early workshops thought I was insane, but they probably are correct actually. But but my idea was also to do it as a creative project, and I did a kind of a skeleton track, if you like, as well, where I hoped that some of the other participants might not necessarily the composers, but the people that were submitting ideas and stuff. I thought that maybe someone would take that challenge and write some melodies, but in the end it was just yourself, Steve, and Pete that picked up on that, and you both did amazing things with the track and responded to it in different ways. And in fact, Steve, you actually you just worked completely off the skeleton track, and I know that Pete realised that I'd probably written some more music and asked for that, so that's where we get the full accompaniment coming in, which I have to say is absolutely brilliant. I love what Pete's done. I love what you've done also, Stephen. Your contribution, Steve, was like, to me, it made me go back to the piece and add additional things after that, So it was just, I think the musical map it's self-explanatory. I just took everything, the whole shebang, and listened to it and tried to put it together a wee bit, experimentation, a wee bit like Hamish when you heard him talking there as well. That was very interesting when he talked about moving phrases up and down against other things, and that was very interesting. I know Hamish has got some amazing techniques for writing. So my own stance on it was just it's there. Try and put something together from it, and there is a bit of improvisation in it. I had a rough idea, a rough map, if you like, of where I was going to go, and I did love when the second part of the tune, where it goes down to half time, and then that glacier recording that you submitted, when you hear that at half speed, and the ringing stones at half speed, it changed the I had to kind of change my melodic approach, and also the tuning, which Pete picked up on also. So that made me tune the fiddle slightly differently and respond differently in terms of phrases, and but it did get into quite a kind of trance-like kind of mood for me, and so the performance was pretty spontaneous in the end. I think I probably, it was quite late at night, and I'd maybe been maybe had a glass of wine or something with my dinner, So I was quite relaxed, and but it is quite a kind of improvised thing as well, you know. And I think the final piece is absolutely fabulously enhanced by the guitar contributions.
No, thanks very much. And it's a tune, but not as we normally know it. So it's really spacey. And like you say, it's got this sort of improvised, very tree, jazzy, almost Indian edge to it. So, Pete, how on earth did you put chords to it?
Well, to let you into a secret, Steve, I was terrified from start to finish while I was working on this piece of music. It was, you know, Charlie dropped me a text one night and said, "Do you fancy having a go at putting some harmony to this?" So I thought, "Oh, let's have a listen." And it was lovely because I've been listening to all the different pieces by all the different artists involved in the project at that point. And as Charlie, as you were saying, it's very organic, and it floats over the top of this soundscape created with the various sounds from the map, which is very much like the sound of, you know, I imagine sort of sails creaking in the rigging of a big ship. It's got that sound about it. And I was thinking to myself, well, I want to put harmony in this, but I want to stay out of the way. I don't want to be clumsy with this. So it really had to be a matter of you know, just listen to it many times and then try to put something on which didn't get in the way of what was already there. And 4 separate movements, 4 separate sections, and each one I tackled slightly differently. And as you said, because you had tuned in on the kind of the true sounds from the recordings on the map, there was a small amount of tweaking of the guitar tuning just to make it sit alongside that between the different measures as well. So that's how it came about from my side. But it was a real thrill to work on it because it was the first time I'd ever had a chance on something which is more of a soundscape than just sort of banging out a guitar accompaniment behind traditional music, jigs and reels, for example.
Yeah, that's thanks. It has been an interesting aspect of this project that it's taken some of us into somewhat uncharted territory at times. But, that's been a good thing. So yeah, I mean, what did this project mean to you during lockdown, Charlie?
It was a brilliant thing. I'd just like to you know, add to what everyone else has said about it. You know, like the fact that it was a stimulus. It made you feel good. You've been asked to do something. It gives you a kick up the backside, as Shona said. And I had a few writing things going on through lockdown, which was brilliant for me. And you know, I just thought the whole process was amazing. And you know, I loved it. Loved it.
That's great. And maybe a question for you as well, Pete. You know, do you see any of these new ways of working that we've had online? Do you think there's legs in them for the creative community next year? Do you think they'll be sustained?
Very much. I think it is. It is. You know, one of the things that's come through into tonight's discussions, all the different artists involved here, is the fact that we've had a real sort of turbo boost in our ability to be able to work collaboratively online, which we didn't have before. I have to say that nothing beats live music. It'll be so lovely to get back to sort of unrestricted live music. But we've now got this super set of new skills to be able to collaborate online, which I think will work alongside that very well. It's a really positive experience, start to finish. As a performing musician, one of the hardest things for me, and I think others have said this through the course of the evening, was there were some pretty lonely moments. If you're used to going out and playing gigs all the time, it's quite hard as a performing musician to be faced with a situation where all of your opportunity to work out and about in doing gigs is taken away from you. And this project has really helped to sort of span that. It's given us an opportunity to work musically, but also to work with our pals, you know, the fellow musicians and those that are involved in the music scene in other capacities as well. It's just been lovely being part of that. The project has kept all of that together for us.
That's fantastic. So what next for Charlie then?
Next for me, well, I'm just going to try and make it to the end of the year, I think.
That's a noble goal.
And but we've got a big gig coming up with Cabrach at Celtic Connections. Who knows? Will it go ahead? I hope so. But it's a very interesting one, and it's been we're getting strings. Basically an orchestration of a lot of the Cabrach songs. Greg Lawson's involved with that, and it's quite interesting. So the scores, once you've got a score, Adam, with an orchestra, you can take it round the world. And so as a result of that, we've been asked to do gigs in Lorient Festival with Cabrach and an orchestra, and also in possibly in Galicia in next summer. So that's an amazing thing. So I'm really looking forward to that. And I echo what Pete's saying there. It's great to play live music. I'm so lucky that I get to play with so many amazing musicians, and that's what music's all about to me. Is about playing with other people. That's where I get my buzz. So that's pretty much it. I do a lot of work locally here with the Fyfe Spey and working with young people here, so I really enjoy that too. And I wrote some music this year which involved them, and so I'm very lucky that organisation's here, and that gives me supports my income, in terms of tuition and working with the Fyfe group itself.
That's fantastic. And what next for Pete?
Well, I mean, hopefully in the new year we can get back to some face-to-face group tuition. That would be nice. It's all very well doing it online, but the nice thing about being in a village hall on a Saturday morning is you get a fine piece and a cup of tea along with your group tuition and a fine blender. So it'll be lovely to get back to that. Half-finished songs. I've suddenly found these things have switched on, so I have a number of songs in the pipeline. So the new year is to get these recorded and get them out and about there. So that's the next thing for me.
Oh, that's fantastic. We really look forward to hearing those, Pete. That'll be excellent. So thank you both very much. It's a fantastic and quite unique piece of music. So thanks very much for being part of the project and for this wonderful contribution. And back to Shona.
Thanks so much, Steve and Pete and Charlie. We are at almost at the end of our concert and book launch event tonight. We've got one more composer to go, and that composer is Fraser Fifield. Fraser, who is originally from the Northeast, he's a piper, and he's adapted his skills and phrasings that he developed through his training and transferred them onto saxophone, clarinet, low whistle, and loads of other instruments. He just, I think he could play anything that you need to blow into. I think he just would make a very good job of any wind instrument, Fraser. He has played with numerous bands over the years, including Salsa Celtica and Old Blind Dogs and the Afro-Celt sound system. And his latest album, Cabrach, was recently released to great critical acclaim. Fraser's going to join me shortly, but first we're going to hear his composition for the project, and it's called Our Living Rivers and Glens.
Hello everybody. My section of the evening's performance. I'm looking forward to give you a rendition of the tune I wrote for the project in just a few seconds. I'd like to say personal thanks to all the different individuals who contributed to the process, putting the sounds and images up on the map. It's evolved into a fascinating snapshot of the Northeast in some way. And there'll be no ringing stones in today's rendition, unfortunately. I built my track around a rhythmic foundation that featured those ringing stone sounds which I've been familiar with since my youth, when occasionally I would stumble across these things. So here we go. I'm going to stand up and go over to my seat. I've put the camera down here, so hopefully you can see the pedals which I've set up, and get the full picture of what's going on. Fingers crossed it goes okay and I don't have to redo all this. All the best. Looking forward to hearing the other performances and all your various lovely utterances, and I'll speak to you soon, hopefully in person.
Absolutely beautiful stuff there from Fraser Fifield, and I am so happy to be joined live by Fraser now. Are you there, Fraser?
I think so.
Yeah, you're here. Fantastic. You're in Edinburgh just now, are you?
Yes, I am.
Yeah, great stuff. So, can you tell us a wee bit more about your inspiration for your piece, Our Rivers and Glens?
Well, in one sense, it was a kind of a holistic view of the online contributions, and I come from mostly from a living river and glen tanner, so I felt like a bona fide contributor in that sense, if you know what I mean. And then I got into the audio bits and pieces from the map, and made a rhythm track out of that, and things grew arms and legs from there. And it's a bird song, and Steve's glacial sounds, they all make an appearance, and yeah.
Amazing. Yeah, I think you've just about got a bit of everything in there, haven't you? It's just such a full piece of music, really looking at the map as an overall piece of art as well. What has it meant to you to be involved in this project over the past few months?
What has it meant to me? It's nice to be. Yeah, I'm not living in the northeast these days, so I appreciate every opportunity to reaffirm my connection with the area, and it's a lovely bunch of folks to be associated with, of course. And so we're all in this this condition where it's all rather unfortunate, really, isn't it, that we're forced into this online environment, but we're making of it the very best that we can. And I think this exemplifies the silver lining in a big cloud.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think everybody's found something good from this project. It's come out of a really difficult time. I mean, it came out of the Dee and Don Cayley Collective wanting to try and support musicians through a difficult period as well. How do you find working to a deadline? It's maybe not something that a lot of musicians do.
Helpful, to be honest, Shona. Yeah, helpful. Yeah, I think it's. I've always benefited from a deadline of some sort to work towards. Yeah, it just helps get things done.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hopefully not too last minute. I was remarkably kind of in good time with this project. It's usually it's a bit closer to the wire, but it was a pleasure just to be let free to do what I do. That because I've like the other project, I've been spending a bit of time on the Cabrach music. It was just me, myself, and I. So due to circumstances, of course, and so this was like that. And but fortunately, I've been involved in those endeavours for many years, ever since the Atari computer lunchtime in the Boy Academy. I'd be beavering away, making wee tracks. So it's not a new pursuit in that regard, and the online file sharing thing is not new either. But it's grown arms and legs in the last couple of years. But I've been doing it for quite a while. I was on the Eurovision entry for Montenegro in 2015. I never left my front room. Might not have got dressed, I don't know, but they were playing whistle.
That's amazing. I mean, if you take anything away from tonight, the folks that are watching on Facebook and YouTube, the fact that Fraser Fifield was in the Montenegro Eurovision track is that's a piece of pub quiz trivia that you're never going to get anywhere else. That's fantastic. That's amazing. have you got a favourite memory of the project at all?
My favourite memory will be when we get together for a good in-person pat on the back and a wee drink at some stage in the very near future, I think. But it's all too recent to pick out one. It's been a lovely process and one of ongoing connectivity that everyone's I think mentioned one way or other, which has been more important, or we all recognise the importance of it more, given our government as doing all this, telling us to do all this stuff.
Yeah. So, what's next for you? I know you've just released your album. Are you planning to tour, or have you got any exciting gigs coming up?
A bit quiet really on the gig front at the minute. But looking forward to really getting into. Well, I've not stopped really, actually. Just into the music, full stop. The piping thing was had to get really into the pipes, and that was great last year. A lot of practice, and did a wee broadcast on Pipeline, and made this album. So, because I moved to Cooper, so I can play the pipes a lot more freely than I could in Edinburgh, and same's true for the saxophone. And so, there's lots of new music to come, that's for sure. That's what I do.
Brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Fraser, for joining us. And I'm going to pass back to Steve, and he's going to do a few thanks.
So first of all, thanks everyone for joining us for what's been a wonderful evening. Fantastic new music, introducing our beautiful new book. So thank you very much to Gill and Pete, Gill Russell and Pete Stollery for that. And also to acknowledge again Richie Lamb, who did the graphic design. I think you'll see what a wonderful job he's done once you have your copies. We'd also obviously like to thank all the musicians tonight. So thank you very much to Fraser Fifield, Charlie McKerron, to Hamish Napier, Jenny Sturgeon, to Arthur Coates, to Adam Sutherland, and to Iona Fyfe, and to Shona Donaldson, and to Paul Anderson. I think I've got everybody. So thanks everyone for not only the musical performances, which were beautiful, but actually giving us such a deep insight into how the music was created and the inspiration that came from the media map. We'd also like to thank all the 80 people who took part in the project, and also Creative Scotland importantly funded us. So I especially would like to thank Siobhan Adson at Creative Scotland for her partnership in not only getting the project going, but also helping to sustain it.
Yeah, I would like to add a few thanks onto that. I'd like to thank the committee of the Dee and Don Ceilidh Collective, and in particular the subcommittee who were involved with the Living Rivers and Glens project. It really makes such a difference to a project when you have a group of folk on a committee who are really supportive and encouraging and just get on great. So it has been an absolute pleasure to work with the Dee and Don Ceilidh Collective on this project. I would like to thank each and every one of you who has joined us tonight on Facebook and on our YouTube channel. And I would really encourage you to head along to our website, deeanddonceilidhcollective.com, to order the book. If you do that in the next couple of days, they will be here for Christmas. And that is a great last minute Christmas present, I must say. I would also like to say very sincere thanks to a man without this, none of this would be happening tonight. Philip McCallum, who is down in London and is doing all our techie stuff behind the scene. He has been absolutely fantastic, and he's been a real pleasure to work with. So thank you very much to Mac. And Steve might tell you a wee bit more about what the Dee and Don Ceilidh Collective are possibly planning next year.
So I think many of us are realising that the world of blended work, i.e. a bit of online and a bit of face-to-face, is with us to stay. We'd obviously want to get together as soon as possible face-to-face, but we're starting to think now it's probably wise to plan for that in summer when we can be in gazebos and you know, outside. So that's where our thinking is at the moment. It would also be nice to carry on with some online work, perhaps not so much the online tuition, because that's handled quite well by other groups, but maybe some more performances from some of the wonderful people in our community. So we're just starting to think about that. Frankly, it's going to be good to have a bit of a break after what's been quite intense work on this project this year. So we're just going to decompress a little bit and like Charlie, hopefully make it to the end of the year and then come back fresh next year with some new plans.
Brilliant. So one last thank you from me. I'd like to say thank you to my co-host Steve, who has been absolutely brilliant tonight. And again, we are extremely proud of this project, our Living Rivers and Glens, and we are delighted that you were able to join us tonight to celebrate the book launch and the premiere of all the pieces of music. So it's just for me to say good night, and I hope you have a wonderful festive season, and we will hopefully see you in 2022.